Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ramblemancy. We are here tonight with our usual programming.
I was like, wait, I really thought there was gonna be something more there. I was like, wait, did I miss something when I was out of the room?
I'll
Or
be honest with you. I also thought there was going to be something more there, and I started a sentence with "Oh, we have something to talk about," and then I was like, "No, we don't." That sentence ended where it ended, as all sentences do. Tonight we will be.
Tonight on Ramblemancy.
so we're
Let's.
already off to a good
All
start,
right.
guys.
Sorry, I gotta take us offline. We gotta start over. No, gotta start over. We gotta
All right,
start fresh. Start
we're
fresh.
taking a mulligan on this one.
um. All right. First of all, welcome Gemini Lightning and Nico. Welcome Jolly Old Up Nicholas. Hello. Welcome to the stream. Um. Tonight we are talking about a bunch of stuff. Specifically our formative media and how it shaped us. So essentially, like many of our previous conversations, such as like video gaming and a different one that I don't remember what it was, but I know we did it. We are going to try to shy away from doing the like let's list our favorite things from when we were kids and more kind of engage in the more meaningful aspects of about those things. So yeah, mostly tonight's going to be. That's why tonight's topic is not just about formative media and like the things that we liked when we were kids, or early on in our enjoyment of a particular genre or medium, um, but rather to also focus on just like how that has shaped us in our trajectory throughout our lives. That is what we're going to be talking about tonight. Um, Nico says, I'm on my phone, so I don't know how much of a help I'll be in terms of modding today. Okay, that's fine. That's okay. We've got John and we've got a Geek Outs, and I am not going to assume, but I suspect that we will have an Amethyst Cat Lady at some point. Um,
Even when I'm on the show, I tend to be at light and fast on the mod sword. So
yeah. Yeah, that will be also lying in bed and don't really know how much consciousness I have left for today, but I guess we'll find out. All right. Well, if it in the event that it is not about an approximately 1.5 hours, Nico, let us soothe you to sleep with our dulcet tones. I'm gonna do the rest of the stream like this, right up here. Just gonna talk very quietly into the microphone. Do the radio thing. I'm not gonna do that. That's exhausting.
Yeah, we're just welcome this evening to 109.5 Ramble Mancy.
Ramblemancy, and I spoke last.
Okay, this is
Off
I
to a
can.
great. This is off the rails. I love it.
we're already way off. All right,
It's been one of those days too.
I will say before we get started that yesterday, not yesterday, Wednesday on Infinite Horizon, we talked. I mentioned at the top of the episode, I read out. I'm not going to do it this time, but I'll just sort of summarize. But I read off the announcement that I put up on Discord a couple of weeks ago, basically about how right now we're sort of treading water due to the fact that we've had people out due to illness, to vacations, mental health breaks, those kinds of things. And so because of that, it's sort of left us in a position where things are a little bit unpredictable right now. So um, things to be aware of: that content either here or on Patreon, it's going to be pretty common for the next little while, for it to be delayed or rescheduled. That's going to be pretty common, as you may have already seen. So right now, and also any future projects that we had in the works everything has been put on hold while we pretty much just focus on doing just what we're doing right now. So that's going to be our future for the like, hopefully temporary. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at right now. But so thank you everybody for your patience with us so far. And we will continue to operate this way until it is no longer viable, or until we get back on track. So, okay, with that said and out of the way, John, what do you got for us?
What do I have? What do I have, Lucas? I certainly hope I have something, because at the end of the sentence, I'm going to need to be able to keep talking.
Are you stalling? Are you stalling
I
right now?
am stalling. I'm stalling a little bit so that I can open the note on my phone where I had made some notes for myself earlier today. But no, I think so what we're talking about tonight is kind of the meta discussion about formative media. And I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot this week is how not just the media that we consume kind of shapes how the stories we tell about ourselves, the stories we consume, kind of shape the stories we tell to ourselves about ourselves. They also kind of shape our expectations of what a story is or what a story should be. And I think especially for people with any kind of creative outlet, the media that is formative for us in those areas, or even in other areas, can inform the ways in which we create. And so I think that's maybe a good question to start the evening off on, is as somebody who creates stuff, like we all do here in various forms, whether it's like writing the stuff that we do for Patreon posts, or like GMing on actual plays, or editing, visual art, those kinds of things. And this goes for you too, Chat, and all of your various creative endeavors. What's some media that was formative for you that kind of informs what you create, and kind of how is it shaped the thing that you do?
Oh yeah. I'm having a thought. It's forming as I'm going to talk, so bear with me.
Okay.
Because I just had this realization right now. In a sense, I think I probably was getting there eventually, but I've realized that a lot of the media I consumed in my younger boy, when I was a young boy, was
I have a question. Is that BOY or BOI or multiple eyes? Are there
oh, it's
multiple eyes?
multiple eyes.
Multiple eyes. Okay, boy.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Boy.
See, that's better than me. I went straight to My Chemical Romance, so
Perfect.
never a good place to go.
Oh, perfect. No, it's fine.
Talk about formative media. That's middle school music right there. Anyway, please continue, Freeman. Stop me.
You're not wrong. I think a lot of the media, my consumption of media has been mostly, it's been book on tape, so someone's reading it. A good example is Jim Dale, who reads all of the Harry Potters. His voice is very good. And consuming, I never really was into reading. And so when Lucas and I did Mason's character journal, I realized how much fun I had recording my voice, even though it was kind of cringy for me at first to record and listen to my voice in that thing. It's like it's a very not revealing, but you're opening up, but I found that I really enjoy doing that. And so I think it's because instead of doing so much reading, I think it's because I did so much listening and absorbing. And as you know, I don't talk a whole lot. I'm pretty quiet, except when I'm being annoying. Yeah, I do a lot of listening and absorb information. So that's kind of just a realization I just kind of had putting the pieces together. I just had right now. So thank you. That's a
really
good
cool.
question.
Yeah, no,
I think that's where I'm. Yeah, I mean that makes sense, right?
That does make sense. That's, as you were talking, I was like, wow, that's really cool.
I think it is too. Yeah, like even when I was studying for this play, where I was mostly just the one person in it. There was two other characters, but I was monologuing most of it. I realized the only way I could memorize this whole thing in like so many months, because I got called on late in the production. Another guy called out, and they're like, "All right, well, Freeman, how about you?" Because I auditioned for it originally, even though. In any case, long story short, the way I actually managed to memorize these lines was I recorded myself and then I listened for hours, and that's how I did it. And that's another realization I just made right now. Holy shit! What a night!
Yo, what a question to start off the night.
Wow. All right.
Let's see. While I let Freeman sit with that for a while, I will attempt to answer mine. I'll let Freeman sit with his epiphanies for a little bit. I know that I have There's a particular piece of media that I'm now currently struggling to recall. But I know what it is. I remember what it is. But there is a particular there are several my mostly my GMing is what I'm going to be talking about here, cuz like my writing, most of my writing didn't really has never really revolved around like fiction, except for like the mental part of the writing. Like the actual writing part of the writing never ended up being like uh happening. But so most of my written work was poetry, which has very different origins in terms of my formative media. But um as far as my like creative like fiction work, it's primarily been in the realm of tabletop RPGs. So that's kind of where I'm going to be focusing my part of this question. Um, while over the last several years, I've seen a lot of changes in a lot of the way that I run my games, the types of stories that I create for them. But there are some common like baseline threads, like essentially the foundations of the house that is my GMing. There have been multiple additions and renovations to that house, but the foundations pretty much have remained the same. And a lot of my formative stuff is the media that I was consuming around the first time that I ever GM'd anything. And in this particular case, that was Dragon Age Origins. So a lot of the storytelling beats and tropes that are in that game, you can still find them if you know where to look. You can still find them in my GMing to this day. A lot of those things are in there, and so for me, it would be that. It would be like I'll have to think for a little bit longer to figure out like specific stuff, but and it may not even be on this episode. Like it may take me a while to actually like pick through that and go, all right, what's still here, you know.
Right.
Just like with the foundation of a building, sometimes you got to go down there and look around and see what's still good, what's still around. What's holding this up?
Yeah. The question just like years later, you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah. So yes, Karaoke Night 69, welcome. Gemini Lightning says, most of my formative years before 10 was in Korea, so I don't remember much. What I got here, though, was the first series that I was hooked on was Stargate SG-1. Nice. It really helped me understand that I love sci-fi and planets and space. That love has stuck with me since, and the mindset of there is always something more to learn, something else to gather, etc. is paramount to my life philosophy. Whew, that's a good one. That is a good one. I love that. That is really cool. I loved that show. It was one of those shows that was like, it was, for me anyway, my experience with it was that it was like good enough that I was at least somewhat invested, but it was also the kind of thing that I could just sort of like throw on and kind of mindlessly watch. But like the kind of mindlessly watching that you don't feel guilty about doing, right? Where you're just like, I'm enjoying this enough to not feel guilty about the fact that this is my mindless watching. You know?
Right. There's enough substance there that if you turn your brain on and look for it,
yes.
you can. It's you're effectively eating a healthy snack, right? In terms of your media consumption, I think that's a fair assessment.
Substance is the word I was looking for.
Like,
yes.
You know, having some nuts and a banana in the mid-afternoon instead of watching a Transformers movie, which is like, I don't need my brain to watch this, but this is the mental equivalent of eating a bowl of chips.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm doing right now, which is as I'm binging through The Walking Dead.
Yep.
That's I'm just shoving fistful of wavy lays into my mouth. Not even Ruffles. It's wavy lays.
Stuff and things.
Okay. Stargate Atlantis is also excellent. Okay, here I'm gonna, John. Before I let you answer your own question,
go for it.
I'm gonna give my hot take here real quick. Okay, my hot take is that Stargate Universe was actually good. Anyway, moving on.
I don't think I actually. Which one was Stargate Universe?
It was the one that was universally hated by all fans of the other ones.
Oh,
I love. Thank you. Yes, Gemini Lightning. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. We're
Oddly
good.
enough, like my take on this is like oddly as odd as this may sound, like Stargate SG-1 and Star Trek like almost had similar vibes to me in that there was, in broadly speaking, like an over like a season long kind of story arc that was usually running in the background, but it was nice because it was this sci-fi adventure that that was kind of almost like problem slash monster of the week. There was a problem for the heroes to solve this week, and sometimes it would be related to big dangerous things.
Except for when
sometimes
it was the
wouldn't be.
replicators, and then it was the problem of like 6 bajillion years. At least that's what it felt like, anyway.
It was the problem of
Huh.
too much of the show. But yeah, so Stargate Universe was to Stargate what DS9 was to TNG.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. In that the next, and to kind of double back here,
Mhm.
since we've been talking about shows specifically, to double back on our meta discussion for tonight in terms of formative media, Star Trek: The Next Generation, I feel like set a certain standard in contemporary Star Trek that people are like, oh, this is what Star Trek is. And then when you had stuff like Voyager or Deep Space Nine, one of which was a little different, and one of which was very different, as I understand it, from TNG and Captain Picard and everything else, people were like, oh wait, this isn't right, because they had kind of they had decided, um, having viewed TNG, that this is Star Trek. This is what Star Trek, this particular set of things should be what Star Trek is.
Yeah. I have many opinions about that. Ones that may come up later in this episode, or they may not. But before that, I want to get to John's answer to this question, as well as a few of chat's answers as well. So
I suppose I should answer my own
Yeah.
question, right? I don't just get to show up and pick on you guys, huh?
Well, you can pick on me.
I mean, I probably will in a moment, because I had a thought while you were talking,
Oh,
but
cool.
we'll get to that in a moment. The fur gremlin has emerged, so let's see if she makes.
Oh boy.
In terms of the things that I think inspire me to create as a hobby artist, I kind of know what they are, because my formative experiences in art and comics have been a number of my like close friends recently, and so that's a lot of what pushes me there. But I think, in terms of the media that I think inspires a lot, at least the formative media, I think that plays into a lot of what I create, is a little bit in the writing and the world building and the fantasy sort of sense. There's two things, I think, and one was The Hobbit, not The Lord of the Rings. I will note The Hobbit, and the other is Avatar: The Last Airbender, because that struck me at that like sort of phase in my life where I was think like starting to like feel like I was forming opinions about their like stronger affinities for the kinds of media that I liked. And in particular, like I loved the like the almost fairy tale sense of wonder that both of those things had, because The Hobbit is almost just like a chain of fairy tale style stories that are strung together. And Avatar: The Last Airbender has this kind of sprawling, beautiful world, and it's very very character driven, and so I think the stories that I write and the stories that I'm drawn to tend to be ones that, because of those experiences, are ones that are not necessarily because of The Hobbit in this respect, but because of The Last Airbender and some of the other media that I consumed. I think that stories that I write tend to be very focused um, on the issues, like on the stories of a particular couple of characters, as opposed to like the Game of Thrones style. This is the big political world, and all of these characters are the product of it. I'm more interested in like this person and their story. So, and I'll say that in recent times, like Brandon Sanderson, has also been like, I think, a big point of kind of like almost formative media for me in representing representing in particular like illness and like very complex characters. So
Yeah. I want to get to chat because I saw a few things. I saw. Let's see. Nico says, "I like the media that I feel like the media that left the biggest impact or the biggest mark on me are JRPGs and animated shows slash anime. So yeah, a lot of found family, hope dies last type shit, which for people that know me should explain a lot." Fair.
I know what you've done in our Tuesday game of Cypher, Nico. I
Karaoke Night
I can
69
see that.
says, "For some reason, I've read far more fan fiction than I have actually watched Stargate Atlantis. I avoid talking to people about it because I don't know what's canon and what's not." Amazing. Uh,
I,
yeah.
exclusively because of Caitlin. I am the same way about it in that I have read more fan fiction about it and I love it,
Mm-hmm.
but like I've read more fan fiction about it than I have consumed actual it content. Like I have not read either of the books. I have seen like the 70s miniseries, the 90s miniseries,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen neither of the movies, but
Yeah.
I've read a ton of fan fiction about them.
Geek Out said, "I grew up when TNG was airing, and the other franchise that I saw as a kid was the Alien franchise. Both made an impact." Ooh, yes, also good ones. Ones that I've actually. I feel like those are some of the most common, like, sci-fi formative type things that I hear about, right? Alien and Star Trek Next Generation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I hear about those much more often, I think, than anything else. Amethyst Cat Lady, welcome. Notice there's no live announcement on the Discord.
I forgot to post a live announcement this evening. I'm sorry,
Did
my
you?
friend.
I thought it was there.
I thought it was two
Oh,
actually.
that's interesting. Okay, well,
Huh.
Oh, well, thank you,
Thank
Amethyst
you.
Cat Lady, for catching us
yeah,
on that one.
thank you very much.
Oh
Totally
man.
spaced out on that.
Uh-huh.
We were getting rambly before we even got
Yeah.
like live, so we probably just
I know we were pretty punchy in the few minutes before we went live.
Okay, let's see. Gemini Lightning says, and then honestly, Eric's stream punk group have done a lot for me in opening my eyes about TTRPGs, diversity in various arenas, and just what it means to tell stories with a group of friends for the love of storytelling. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I would agree with that myself. When if we're talking about formative in terms of just what has influenced us in major ways and not necessarily like stuff that we consumed a long ass time ago, I
Mhm.
would definitely include that in there as well for the exact same reason actually, which is the idea that um, there was a while, and I've talked about this a few times. But there was a period of time when I was feeling like I was becoming. I guess I didn't feel it at the time. I felt it later. Where I felt like I was becoming sort of a toxic GM, where it became like my it was. I had very unhealthy attitudes about and hear what I'm about to say next. Very toxic attitudes about my game. Um, yes, specifically that my game. Um, that it was. I would get upset when my players would play in a certain way, and granted, don't get me wrong, sometimes it was like kind of problematic shit, but it wasn't like problematic as like in the dynamics of the group as players at the table. It was like problematic in character stuff that was like, that makes me very uncomfortable and I don't know why, and right, that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
um my my trajectory changed by watching a lot of like Eric Campbell, the Stream Punks, and the way that they interacted with each other, and the way that for them, even though they were on a like relative to the sphere, big budget like channel doing this stuff, for them that was secondary. If that, for them it was about using the game that they were playing to just yet another way to tell each other how much they loved each other, and like that was just like this huge change for me that like came from watching that and seeing the game run and played that way, that sort of drastically altered how I thought about the games that I was running and participating in. So I would agree with that one as well.
Yeah, and I think like as somebody who like has GM'd a fair bit and somebody who has also like been playing actually a lot the last 6 months or so. I've noticed a change in like how I play tabletop games, having been kind of since Gen Con last year, very steeped in the Streampunks community. Like a lot of my friends consume a lot of that content. I've seen some of it myself. Like there's a lot of it around me at all times. And so like the way that they play has kind of begun to inform that. And so I've found that the characters that I play and the stories that I tell tend to be kind of in that vein. Um, and it's almost, again, like I gravitate towards found family stories like naturally in the media that I consume, and so like I find myself also, I think, like moving towards telling those kinds of stories when I do, like when I'm whether I'm a player or a character too, or whether I'm a player or a GM. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. um. Oh gosh, sorry. I just realized I missed a bunch of chat. Because I forgot to resume auto scroll. That's why. Whoops. Um. Amethyst cat lady, calling herself out. Consuming more fanfic than the actual content. Who would ever do that? Stuffs Naruto fanfiction deeper under the mattress. Excellent.
Something mattress stuff no jutsu.
Yeah. Nico says, I feel like I fall somewhat in the middle of that personal story / grander narrative spectrum, as in, I like a personal story that has greater consequences on the world around it. Yes, exactly. That is, I'd say that I probably fall in that spectrum too, to be completely honest. I see. Okay, here we go. I've got another one. This dovetails perfectly with what Nico just said, which is that another one for me is Firefly. That's a big one because that one. Firefly.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, Firefly for me is what shifted my entire mentality. I think it's the first time I remember ever thinking this deeply about something like this, which it shifted my mentality from a plot-driven story to a character-driven story. Because if you look at what actually happens in Firefly, absolutely like minimal amounts of that is plot focused.
Yeah.
Like minimal amount of that. Every single episode, while there is a episode plot, it's all character driven. Everything that happens is it's plot that is there to serve character growth and building. It is like, and to illustrate characters. That's basically the entirety of that show. And then every once in a while they're like, oh yeah, I guess we should probably like have a story or something. Here we go. Just here, take a few crumbs, right? And like
take a few crumbs.
So like that, yeah, I think that was my that was another big one for me because ever since that is the show, the piece of formative media that specifically I never looked at stories the same way again after that. From that moment on, from watching Firefly, I think I was like, it was definitely already off the air when I started watching it. I think I was like, God, I want to say I was like 13 or 14 when I watched it for the first time. And from that moment on, that show was the first time I remember ever actually thinking about the power that a character-driven story can bring. So,
yeah, I remember when when I saw Serenity at the end of that when they're landing on Miranda, and you know what, I can spoil this, and Wash dies. I was just like, oh my God. Like it was just such a punch in the gut. Like, and you know, we got what, like 2/3 of a season, but
yeah. Sorry, I'm just it was more like a steel rod in the gut.
yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And
sorry,
like, you know,
I feel dirty by making that joke. I feel bad about that.
we had like very little time in the grand scheme of things with those characters, but they've done a very good job about making them feel like real people, I think, or like making them feel like people to whom something mattered.
Right.
And
that's the thing that I that I was talking about, like the phrase that I've used recently, because I've been finally watching The Walking Dead, because before I had no interest in it, and the reason that I had no interest in it is because it is, and I have confirmed this, although there are a couple of seasons kind of in the middle that have, or earlier middle seasons that have strayed away from this, but it is the kind of show where you have no character consistency, because character and character intelligence is sacrificed on the altar of pointless drama constantly.
Yep.
It is, yeah. Uh, and when you have that, when you are focused on just like the drama, what is going to happen? Then what ends up happening is you end up with inconsistent characters, because the decision making on the part of the writers is always going to be, what is the worst possible thing that could happen right at this moment? All right, how do we make that happen? And then it usually results in somebody behaving in a way that literally nobody, let alone that particular character, would act in that situation. But I digress.
Yeah. It'd be very boring and nobody would watch. If I were in charge of a zombie TV series, it would be very boring and no one would watch it, says Karaoke Night.
Yeah.
You know, fair. I feel like there are a lot of problems in shows like The Walking Dead that are pretty solved. One of the problems that I think this is, again, a product of the media that was formative for me, which the story of which is almost always that communities coming together is stronger than divisiveness, right? Community and family and relationships and stuff like that are the more powerful force. And I feel like a lot of shows like that have this kind of assumption that people are inherently like kind of nasty and divisive, and they'll always do the thing that only suits them, right? And it frustrates me when shows just like wallow in that to the
Game of
point where
Thrones.
it's I wasn't gonna say it. Just wallow in that to the point that it's like no longer even believable. Because like I can understand a certain level of self-servingness in times of crisis, but like also I again, because of the media that I consumed during my formative years, or the media that I am drawn to, the media that like drives me to create, is the stories about people that come together to do something.
Yeah, I agree, and I have many I have many opinions about that too, and the origins of that I won't go into here, because they are uh they're pretty they are quite warm, as the kids are saying. But
You got some lukewarm / hot takes.
just a little bit, but we won't get into that because it's not really that important or really worthwhile getting into. But oh gosh.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
if I can harken back to just like something that we were talking about earlier in terms of like expectations and like the kind of games that we run in terms of TTRPGs and stuff like that, like I think actual play content kind of factors into that. And there's been this surge in the last, in the last few years of actual play content like Critical Role or Dimension 20 or Acquisitions Incorporated, or even like podcasts. There are a few podcasts that I think that I don't know the names of, that are pretty big too.
Adventure Zone.
Yeah, Adventure Zone. Thank you. I knew there was one that I was forgetting that was like a big deal.
Yeah.
The Adventure Zone, like stuff like that, kind of, for a lot of people who have only ever heard about D&D, is this thing that like kind of nerdy dudes played in their parents' basement.
Damn
or,
it!
like,
I
down
knew
at
you were
the
gonna say
Smelly Hobby
basement.
Shop.
All right, now I need to take several drinks. All right, I'll be right back, everybody.
Yeah, I know. That's like the free square when it comes to people's just like decades old assumptions.
I would love
about...
if just one time there was an article in like mainstream news or media about like D&D or tabletop games that did not include the word basement anywhere in it. I would love that. I would like
Now,
for
you
us
might
as a
have-
society
Please.
to move beyond that point.
Yeah.
Now, you might have thought that it's like, oh my god, this is such a like 1980s take. Please, can we move on?
My favorite.
Um,
I'm sorry. I'll let you finish in a second. But like my favorite is Matt Colville on. I think it was on Roundtable when somebody was. I think it was probably like Jackson Lansing. It was Jackson Lansing who was saying how like a lot of people back then were during the Satanic Panic were worried that that D&D were afraid that D&D was gonna, like, people play D&D, it was going to summon the devil. And then Matt Colville like dead stares the camera and goes, and it will. And like
And it will.
and it will.
And it will, and it's CR21.
Oh no.
Seems pretty low
Least
for
in
like
fifth
the literal
edition.
devil, but anyway, continue, John.
I'm not sure what challenge rating it was in AD&D, or if there was challenge rating in AD&D. To be perfectly honest, I don't know anything about it.
Well,
I know
if it
some
helps,
things
in
about AD&D.
Pathfinder, Lucifer is like is like CR 30 something. So like,
Really?
Okay,
Okay.
that
Makes
does
sense.
give me kind of a
yeah,
reference frame. I'm really glad. Like, it's weird because 3.5 is kind of my, again, is my frame of reference for Dungeons and Dragons, and so like when I switched to 5e, it was very much like a comfort, a system that was much more streamlined and less like clunky with a zillion floating modifiers
Mhm.
and things like this is a CR45 monster, and I'm like,
it has an
what?
AC of 73.
As opposed to everything in 5e, which is kind of like your AC is somewhere in a range from like 8 to 23, and that's pretty big, but like it doesn't get much higher than that. And your to hit modifiers usually don't get too astronomical either, where things have to have an AC of 73 because in those games you can stack plus 100 to hit. But yeah, I was just going to say that like if you're like as somebody coming into the hobby with basically no experience, or like with actually playing the games and stuff, it very much I think depends on the media that introduces you to it, the kind of thing that you expect to get out of it, right? If you watch Fantasy High, you're like, okay, D&D is a goofy sort of game about like killing some monsters sometimes, and like just like sort of like having a fun amusing time with your friends. And then like if you watch Critical Role, there's certainly been a lot of unrealistic, we'll say, expectations of people coming into GMing or coming into being a player, of expecting what their D&D game is going to be like because they've watched Critical Role, right?
Yeah,
So
I I agree with what you're saying on principle, but my only sticking point is on Critical Role, because honestly, I've said this before many times, but like I don't actually think that the biggest problem with Critical Role is that it creates unrealistic expectations of what a D&D game should be. But I think the biggest issue is kind of what I mentioned when we were talking with Ray a couple weeks back,
mm-hmm.
which is that it definitely promotes and idealizes a style of GM player relationship that I think is ultimately harmful. Not to them, not to Critical Role. It works for them. It works for them, and it they love it. That's so like I'm not passing a judgment on what they do. I'm just saying that it the biggest issue is that it idealizes this relationship between the GM and the players as being like there is like a hermetically sealed wall between us, and I am a creator. I am an like the like I am
Mm-hmm.
as the creator am an island, and like nothing must leave the island except for incredibly controlled bursts that I have full say over. And like yeah, like when you sit down at a table with a bunch of people to play a game, if you are all playing that game as like where your focus is the narrative, the story that you all tell together, then your players should be your co-conspirators, not your audience. And anyway, that's my thing on that. That's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah.
That's patently untrue. I have way more to say about that, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to.
But we will limit ourselves to the time allotted us.
But Karaoke Night 69, I will acknowledge this and say thank you for the recommendations, because I love Z Nation, but I was unsure about Black Summer, and I may consider it now. So thanks. Let's see.
Oh, Black Summer. I watched that.
You did?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought you only watched a little bit of it.
Oh, is there more? I watched as much as available on
Oh,
Netflix, which
I don't know.
doesn't mean much,
Yeah, I have
honestly.
no.
Like Netflix is always behind a bit,
Yeah, I have
but
no idea.
I enjoyed it.
Isn't Black Summer
Or
a
am I thinking of a
Netflix
different
thing?
one?
I thought it is a
Yes, it
Netflix thing.
is. I
Okay.
believe it is. Yeah, never mind. Then I'm just behind. I kind of liked
Well,
it
I mean,
actually.
I thought for some reason I remembered you saying that you only watched a couple of episodes, but
Oh,
anyway.
and after that, I watched more.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't follow up with
Fair, fair.
yeah.
Um. Okay, so okay, I do have a thing, and I there was a thing that I wanted to talk about, but it wasn't
Oh
super
yeah.
relevant. So I've spent the last like 20 minutes trying to like find ways in my brain to make it
Mhm.
relevant.
I mean, we can just pivot to it like.
Uh-huh. So, but I think it is relevant. This is I think I did find a way, which is that we sort of led into it with the discussion about Critical Role,
Mhm,
which is that there are ways where like formative media doesn't just influence you in positive ways. Um, there are
mhm.
ways that it can be pretty negative. And I said I was going to talk about my Star Trek opinions, and here they are. So, uh, one of the things that I have seen recently a lot of, and I'm sure many of you have as well, uh, is this attitude, the very common phrase whenever anybody, any like Star Trek, many Star Trek fans are talking about the new Star Trek shows like Discovery and Star Trek Picard, and this very common phrase, which is it just doesn't feel like Star Trek. I don't like it because it doesn't feel like Star Trek. All right, let's unpack that for a second. First of all,
Mhm.
it is not a valid criticism of something. And yes, I am saying that this is me passing a value judgment. Um, it is not a valid criticism of something when you say that you don't like it because it is not like something else. That's not a valid criticism. Um, that like don't get me wrong, there is valid criticism that can be based on that idea. Like if you say I don't like it because it doesn't have the same that this had, and and that takes us to a place that is the antithesis of what this thing used to be. And that's what I see a lot of people doing with Star Trek. However, that's not true. It isn't true. For example, Voyager is very different than the Next Generation. Tonally,
Mhm.
thematically, it is very different. Deep Space Nine, different from both of those. They're all in the same era, and we kind of tend to, I think, because they all came out around the same ish time, um, we kind of
Same
group
like
them up.
7, 8 years,
Yeah,
right?
more than that, but yeah, we
10.
tend to, yeah, probably about 10 years or so, but we tend to group them up, um, and I think that is uh, that's one place where I start getting this is the idea of formative media getting hung up on what something was, and I see this happen in not just Star Trek. I'm just using that as an example because we were talking about it earlier, but
Mhm.
I see people get hung up on this all the time, right? Where something from their past, something from like formative piece of media, they're like that was excellent. I loved that. That was perfect. And then when someone it's expanded upon or um, remade, rebooted, etc. Don't get me wrong, reboots. I'm not about them. We can leave those. We can, but then basically they react by saying, "Oh, it's not like this other stuff that I remember from when I was a kid." It's like, well, of
Mhm.
course it isn't because it's a different show. So yeah,
There wouldn't be another version of it if there was not a new story to tell. And there's valid criticisms to be made of a lot of these
yes,
things, but very
absolutely.
few of them are. But saying that like this isn't the other thing is not a criticism; it's a statement of fact,
Like
right?
a good example of this was with the Elder Scrolls Online, right when that came out, and uh, there are a lot of things to criticize, both from the perspective of video games overall and like as an MMO specifically. There are a lot of things to criticize about that game. However, criticizing it because it isn't Skyrim, the MMO, is not is not a valid criticism. Um, okay, cool. So it's
I didn't
because
realize
closer.
TNG was that old.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, TNG started in the late '80s. Yeah.
Um,
So it's okay. So closer to like 20-ish, almost 20 years. So,
yeah,
um, but Um, yeah,
14.
the other one more recently. This one this one really gets me. The other day I saw that Netflix announced that Legend of Korra is coming to Netflix this coming month, and I was very excited about that for 5 minutes, and then I remembered what the internet was gonna do when that happened. I remembered what that was going to do to the internet, to the discourse on the internet, and I like immediately got sad and annoyed preemptively. But that's one where you don't. It's not even like a. It's not even a that much older, right? But it was still like it wasn't even. It didn't hadn't ended more than just like a couple of years before Korra came out. Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? Something
Yeah.
only just like a couple of years, they and then they made that and basically don't and okay, I'm gonna clarify this. I am not saying that these new versions of stuff do not have valid criticisms to be made about them. I'm just saying that saying that it isn't like the other one, like the ones that came before, isn't one of them. That's what I'm saying. But yeah.
And it's perfectly valid, I think, responding just to what to Karaoke Night is saying about being a bit of a Pokemon purist. It's perfectly valid to enjoy older versions of games more than you enjoy new ones
Mm-hmm.
for a variety of reasons. Like I will say that something like Pokemon, even like Diamond or Pearl or like the things that came out several years ago at this point, are very different from like the games that I started playing on, which was like Pokemon Silver and Gold and Pokemon like Emerald and I think in Ruby. And so like the experience of playing those games on a mechanical level even and on the game design philosophy is very different than playing a Pokemon game that was released, last year. And so I think it's fine to not like new generations of Pokemon games because they are actually while the premise of the game is still pretty much the same, there's a lot that's changed about their design philosophy. So
Yeah. And I think hold on. I'm going to read what Amethyst Cat Lady says because I have a feeling that it is going to go along well with what I was going to say next. But and
mhm.
Scat Lady said, I had the opportunity to watch a live action adaptation of an anime that managed to simultaneously get almost everything right and yet miss the mark on some vital aspects of the characters' relationships. The fatal flaw had to do with tone and intent. TLDR, gay character hitting on a straight character. In the series, it was only ever a passing joke at most after the boundary was set. In the live action, it was more like the character wouldn't drop it, which was a big deal because the respecting of boundaries is the only reason the friendship worked, especially since the straight character had lasting trauma from something from his childhood. Yeah, okay. First of all, yikes. Secondly, secondly, exactly. I think missing the mark is something that the money people, the execs in studios, is probably are probably it's probably one of their best skills. Missing the mark, seeing a thing and totally misunderstanding slash not caring why people liked it. Um, and and I bring this up because I see Gemini Lightning and Geekouts, Admiral Holdo and Rose Tico, Justice for Rose, exactly because the problem with those characters is not that they were there. That is not the problem with those characters, as so many people would have you believe. The problem was with what they were given in terms of story, characterizations, those sorts of things. The same thing is
Problem
true.
begins in the writer's room in that case.
Exactly. The same thing is true with with Doctor Who, with like Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. The problem isn't that she's a woman. That is not the problem. The problem is with the writing. Is with like the stories that she is given. But that's the key. That's the obvious difference that people can see, and so they point to that. It's like causation equals yeah. Uh,
Also correct,
yeah.
Geekouts.
What? Also, Poe and Finn were totally fucking.
Yeah,
We all know.
correct.
We all know.
And this is interesting, Lucas, that you say that because it's something that I've been sitting on here for a few minutes is like the way that uh, you know formative ideas about media informing the way that later media is created and kind of this whole conversation about this. I think a really good example of this actually is the Lord of the Rings movie series followed by the Hobbit trilogy.
Okay.
And it's an excellent example, I think, because the Lord of the Rings is tonally extremely different from the tone of the Hobbit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the source material, like the Hobbit was written first when Tolkien's children were very young, and then the Lord of the Rings was written later when they were older. The Hobbit was written almost as bedtime stories for Tolkien's children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of why it's episodic and almost like whimsical and fairy tale-y. And then the Lord of the Rings is the sprawling fantasy epic that grew out of a few details that were in the Hobbit. But the Lord of the Rings was made into, like, at the time, one of the most groundbreaking film series of its like cinematic age, right? I don't think that's I don't think that's a hot take at all.
No, that's absolutely
Um,
true.
Mhm.
and so you have
Like they
you
literally
have
invented technology to like do what they did.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. And so you have this sprawling fantasy epic movie series, and then someone's like, "Well, wait, Tolkien wrote some more stuff, right? Well, the Silmarillion is basically just like this giant origin story, so let's not make a movie out of that. But what else could we? Oh, The Hobbit is like the prequel to Lord of the Rings, except that it's like kind of not. It's tonally extremely different. And so when you had these writers who were looking at, all right, well, the Hobbit trilogy should be like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, this sprawling fantasy epic, and then they're trying to adapt something that tonally is almost fairy tale-esque, you get what you have in The Hobbit, where you have characters who are like more or less invulnerable in this weird scene where they're like jumping and flipping around in barrels in the barrel ride into Lake Town.
yeah, okay. I'm gonna. I don't think I'm disagreeing with you because I think
Mhm.
I'm agreeing with the principle of what you're saying. Um, and honestly, and prior to the last, prior to the last two films, so literally just in the first, in the
Mhm.
Hobbit films, this argument had a leg to stand on. I'm not putting this forward as having a leg to stand on now because the last two movies invalidated it. But my takeaway when people were pointing to that specific scene that you just mentioned of like flipping around and doing all this crazy over the top shit that was sort of cartoonish. My response to that is, yeah, but keep in mind that this movie isn't these events happening. It's Bilbo telling these events. It's a story. Bilbo is an unreliable narrator in this case, and like
Mhm.
it's making use of the unreliable narrator. Now, granted, I was okay with it in the first film. Like I was fine with it because it made perfect sense to me. That I was like, oh yeah, this is Bilbo telling this story. Like this is absolutely embellished and where it's not meant to be as like these are the actual events of this story. It's Bilbo telling the story. Now,
Mhm.
then the next two films happened, and I could no longer hold that opinion.
Right, because at that point, like, you're like, I know that there is no danger to these characters for reasons that don't really make sense. And so this tension, like the kind of tension that you have in the scene where they're trapped in the mines of Moria in the Lord of the Rings series, the scene where Frodo is stabbed by the troll, but just kidding, he's wearing a mithril shirt. Like, there's not that same kind of tension because you're like, I don't really feel like these characters are actually in danger.
Mhm.
You know, there's the stakes. There don't feel. It doesn't feel like there are any stakes here to me.
Yeah, and mm, I don't know if you need to have that though, Nico. The that only works if you actually have a scene of Bilbo being called out on his bullshit. I don't know if that's necessary. I think it can work without it, especially since they already have the setup of him writing the story, right?
Hmm.
Like they already have that setup, and yeah, there were. I had other arguments, but it's been so long since I've seen those films that I no longer have
Hmm.
like the evidence to point to. But I
And
see what you're
I've
saying, but I'm not. I don't know that it's necessary for that trope to work overall, but like just in general as a blanket statement. But I do see what you're saying, and it probably could have helped those movies, to be honest, to actually include that scene. But
mhm.
mm, I don't know if that could have salvaged them. Even that would. I don't know that that would have salvaged.
the I think it's fair to say that, like, if you're going to try and do the like unreliable narrator kind of frame story thing, and then you have to commit to telling both the frame story and the thing inside the picture frame, which they don't super do. I do agree that like the first film manages to execute on the feel of The Hobbit as on the feel of the source material much
Mm-hmm.
better, and it feels much less like The Hobbit pretending to be a sprawling fantasy epic than the second two movies do. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's an example of, like, from a creator standpoint, where you come into it with this idea of what something should be, and then it kind of negatively affects the outcome of the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, and that let's talk about Star Wars some more because a thing that you said, John, made me think about this,
Mhm.
which is that if the audience already knows knows the stakes, or knows the outcome of something. See, this is the danger with prequels, right? The audience already knows like the outcome of something, or the dangers or what's going to happen in the future to certain characters. Um, then you have to rethink where the drama can't come from the unknown, because the unknown is not unknown. So, like with the Star Wars prequels, for example, if I could change only one thing about the Star Wars prequels, only one, it would be how Anakin's trajectory goes, where or rather the focus of it, rather than have this like brooding teenager, this like it's not fair, right? Dark side tendency kind of thing that like it's like they basically took all of Anakin's like growth and whatever and used it as foreshadowing for like look at this guy, he's gonna become Darth Vader, a fact that everybody had known by that point for like 20 something years. Right?
Mhm.
More than that, even
Right.
more than that, or no, about that, about like 20 some odd years. um and so that's not where they should have focused. The focus should have still been on the unknown, but not the unknown of like, is this guy going to become Darth Vader? The focus should have been on the unknown of how exactly, because
Hmm.
you want to show that this is what the Clone Wars series got right. The Clone Wars got Anakin Skywalker right, where Anakin should have been like the ideal Jedi, just a really great guy, and like not only a perfect Jedi, but also just like a really great person, like somebody that you're like, I want to be friends with that guy, right?
I want to
At
go get a
no
beer with him
point,
afterwards.
at no point did I
Exactly.
ever feel that way about Hayden Christensen.
Nope.
Like at no point did I ever feel that way about his Anakin Skywalker. And
Also,
it's
shit, we forgot to tag our prequel
dang
spoilers.
it.
Chat's
Sorry,
yelling at
everybody, that's my bad.
us. It's from like sorry, 20-year-old spoilers. We can edit it in post into before this.
So like, so yeah, the that's a thing that where like what came I can hear her. I can
She's
hear her.
outside my door. She wants back in.
Uh-huh.
Jesus, that's through the door? Damn. Okay.
Yeah, no, the door is closed.
But yeah, like anyway, that doesn't really have a whole lot of relevance to what we're talking about. But it was something like what you were saying, John. Like basically, we already know the stakes. Like we know the outcome. It like the important thing, if you already know the outcome, is the how. Like that's what I think about prequels. Like if you,
Hmm.
because prequels by definition are made after the thing, are made after the original thing by definition. Because if they were made before, then they wouldn't be prequels. That would just be Star Wars.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like so by definition, people know that these people like they know about Darth Vader. You don't need to foreshadow it because we already know. And so you just basically spend a bunch of time on like this pointlessly whiny, angsty teen with a laser sword and magical powers.
Is that the one with the little wizard boy? The green wizard boy?
No,
Oh gosh. Anyway, that's me ranting about the Star Wars prequels.
yeah. Freeman, one of the things that I was going to touch on earlier that I thought was interesting in terms of media, just was that you mentioned like enjoying creating like the tape for, God, I'm dating myself. Tape is in like a cassette tape.
But actually, you know what's funny is I did use that. I used a cassette tape.
Like
Yeah.
a little hand recorder.
Hmm.
Oh my God, that's
I
so perfect too, because it's like what a noir detective would be like. All right.
I've been one all my life. I think that's what it comes down to. I think here, just not professionally, of course. Don't. Yeah, yeah. It was a cassette. Yeah. So what were you saying though?
But I was just saying, like, it's interesting that, like, especially from the standpoint of a teacher, and I want to say that first of all, I don't know how much stock you can actually place in some of these theories in terms of people having different learning styles, people being more like tactile or kinetic as in motion, or like auditory or visual learners. Like most people are kind of a blend of all of these things. You can have leanings in one direction, but it's just interesting to me that like you say that like I listened to a lot of books because that's what worked for me, and so then like making media in that format and like listening to things is how
Hmm.
I like am inspired to create, or how I am or how I like familiarize myself with things best. So I just think it's interesting, and I wonder almost if there's a connection between that, right? If the media that we find powerfully formative kind of plays into the same way that we are most comfortable taking in information.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Huh. And I
I'm
wonder too.
I'm sort of searching to see how much that is true for myself. I think I'll
Yeah.
have to think about that more, but
Thinking on it now, this is just adding to what I said earlier about listening, recording my lines and listening to it. And let me tell you, ugh, uh, that's my reaction. It's a lot. It's a lot better now with slightly better equipment, you know. And another thing I had to do was also tactile for sure, all the way. Like I have to be working with my hands as well. So another thing about my formative media was not doing media sometimes at all, just like going
Mm.
out and working with my hands. And I had my very good neighbor, very good friend at the time, and taught me taught me skills. You know, we were on a farm, we would use tools, so I learned a lot of stuff with like tools on the land. How to take care and clean them and put them exactly where they go. It's almost like they were like if we used a shovel, the place in the shed that had the shovel would have like almost like a cutout of where the shovel goes, or at least maybe that's just what I remember. Maybe my brain is doing that part, but yeah, I have to do things with my hands. And when I was doing that thing, that play, and I was listening to myself, I also had to be doing something. So I was also really into card magic at the time. So I was doing both card manipulation and I was listening to the lines back, and I would pause. You know, when you're doing a play and you call line. This is like at the you can do this at a certain point.
Mhm.
You're close to memorizing everything. If you forget, you say line. You have someone who reads it to you. You know that. So I would treat the recorder like that,
Hmm.
essentially. Yeah, interest. Yeah, yeah. And I would have to do things with my hands as well. So a little bit of both for me, and a little bit of not using media at all. I kind of rambled a lot of different things there and kind of just smushed it together.
mm, Ramblemancy.
Fair.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
Yeah.
really. I don't know if I've like thought about it enough to actually be able to tell. But
Hmm.
yeah, cuz I mean, I've what was your question again, John, just so that I like
More or less, my question or my observation was just sort of that I wonder almost if the media that we find um, formative, or the media that kind of affects, influences, inspires us most, I wonder if that tracks with the same way that we learn, the same way that we learn best, right? In
hmm,
that some people are better at listening to something and taking in the information. Some people are better at like looking at a picture and reading something. And a lot of people, again, like a lot of people are kind of blends of these things. But I know I have some people have very vivid internal monologues. Some people don't necessarily.
yeah. Okay. I'm I feel like I cannot answer that question for myself because there are like too many factors. Like I do not have enough like examples to go on
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know. I feel like I consume a lot of different kinds of media and I learn. I think I just don't have enough information about like myself, my own learning, and to be able to really actually give any kind of useful answer to that question. But yeah, huh.
Yeah.
It is an interesting thought though.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know if it really goes anywhere, but I'll certainly ponder that one too, because I know I consume a lot of visual media, but I also read a lot. So I have another sort of, I think, observation or question too about something that was mentioned in chat very early. I see Nico's question too about fan fiction and stuff like that, and I do actually have kind of a comment or question about that.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
and it's just to do with inclusivity and representation, right, in our formative media. And I think, especially because of the atmosphere, um, like you find a lot of times in fan fiction that underrepresented groups find their way like much more prominently into those spaces, right? Because you don't have certain corporate restrictions on the things that can go into your that are going to go into your AAA media. um, and so like i I think that like it's important to acknowledge in our formative media like the purpose of it in finding ways that we feel represented or ways that we feel seen, right? The thing that comes to mind for me is there was a video that went around, I think, a couple of weeks ago or a while back, of like a little girl cheering when two characters, when two same-sex characters in Shira like kissed or something on screen, and the kid was just like, wow, you know. And so to me that was just like an example of, and second of all, like go watch, okay, Suki, you can't roll on my keyboard. um Shira is an excellent example of like representation in kind of mainstream media, but it also provides like a way for us to experience the kind of stories that we may want to tell about ourselves, the kind of stories that shape us.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, it's interesting because sometimes I think sometimes you get so used to it, like not so, in some cases get used to not being represented that like you don't actually notice how much you need it until it's there, until you see an
Yeah.
example of it. Like this happened to me. I know like I don't have a whole lot of ground to stand on here, but like it did happen to me when I found out that Eliza Pearl is Puerto Rican, and I when I found that out, I was like, oh, interesting. And like it wasn't until that moment that I was like, oh, that's right, because there aren't very many of well, there aren't very many of us, period, because we live on a tiny fucking island in the middle of it. But like, there aren't very many of us, period, in the world. But like, also uh, in media, in mainstream media, there aren't a lot of like a lot of Puerto Rican people there or anywhere. But but seeing somebody in like prominently in a space that like somebody of my culture like prominently displayed in a space that I also have like huge amounts of interest in was way more influential than I thought it was going to be. Like it was the kind of thing that it just never occurred to me until I saw I heard her mention that she was Puerto Rican on stream, and I was like, "Ooh, what is this feeling?
Mm-hmm.
What is this feeling that I am having?" Right? And there's just like this. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. I wrote Eliza a letter once explaining this, and I was just as bad at explaining it to her as I am right now on stream explaining it to all of you. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that was a thing. Anyway.
Well, no, like, and I had with me in particular was reading it fan fiction, which like is extremely gay,
Mhm.
in a lot of cases. But like, as somebody who's bi, like reading content that like had a character that was going through discovering same-sex attraction, I was like, oh wow, I really feel seen here, right? And so
Mhm.
there's something very powerful in connecting to media in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Amethyst Cat Lady. Representation matters. Yes, it does. Yes, exactly, Geekouts. When Hector was announced as the captain, a Mexican captain in Starfleet, that wasn't a stereotype. I was through the roof. Absolutely. And can I just say that to date, I'm pretty sure that Captain Martinez is my favorite Starfleet captain. I can say that. But also, Gemini Lightning says, Blood of the Void killed me. That show is life. So many Asians playing TTRPGs. Yeah, I really need to, like, catch up on my watching of my TTRPG shows because I'm so far behind absolutely all of them. So, yeah. Oh gosh. I'm catching up here. Hold on. Spy Kids has good representation.
All right, wait, hold on. I don't remember enough about the Spy Kids movies. Please elaborate.
Actually, I'm curious too now that I think about it, but yeah. Anyway, what was I gonna say? I was gonna make more points about this, and they are all gone now. Brain empty. No speak.
Oh yeah, and as I'm just ticking off boxes this Ramblemancy, but Amethyst Cat Lady talking about people who argue that disabled actors can't play disabled characters. Fight me. Like representation of disability is.
I don't understand that argument. I'm sorry. It hurts me. I don't understand that argument.
People with disabilities, as it turns out, are just people. Like they can do the same things you can do. Well, I mean, not exactly the same things that you can do, but
like I don't understand it on the basis of that it is ignorant and stupid, but I also don't understand it as in like where would the logic? I don't follow the logic on that one. Like,
yeah, and you know, again, like coping with disability and chronic illness is something that like is difficult. It's something that doesn't go away, and so like learning to manage that and manage, you know, the manifestation of whatever it is that a person's disability is, like seeing somebody else do that in a very like in a way that's almost like a little bit removed, but you're still connected to them in the way that like reading or like, you know, media in the way that consuming media is something that can help you to almost view your own experiences in a new light, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. God, every time I like have an idea of like this is a thing that I want to bring up and talk about, it immediately goes away. This is my brain today.
I have quite a few of those.
Yeah. In fairness, I've been a little like brain absent most of the day, so but okay, so Spy Kids is the film franchise made by Robert Rodriguez, so the cast and crew was diverse. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I sort of assumed that you were talking about, but just wanted to make sure. And yes, Sam Delev would in fact like a word with the people who say such ignorant and obviously untrue things. Okay. Okay, Amethyst Cat Lady, I understand. I guess I follow the logic. I mean, I still think it's wrong. I follow the logic, but I also think it's wrong. And yeah, okay. The whole Spy Kids family is Hispanic, and it's weird, but it never comes up as being either a good or bad thing. It just is. That may not be the best, but I always respected it for just being what it is, especially since it was released in 2001. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Although, not to take this away from them or anything like that, because they are still Hispanic, but aren't they like Hispanic, but like Spain Hispanic, like European Hispanic? I feel like they were, but not that it matters really, but like because it's still it's this is the issue that I always get caught up in my own head, because it's a matter of like cultural diversity and not necessarily just racial diversity. So that's also a thing. So like, but yes, so I think that's not necessarily the biggest, like, not the most important distinction to make, but I think it is I think it is worth mentioning, because that's the issue that I always get caught up in, because like I look like this, but I'm also like not like, yeah, like my culture is one of like I was raised by two Puerto Rican people, and so like that's, yeah, culturally I don't identify with like white America. However, I also look like this, so there's that. So like this is. Sorry, I'm reading chat and catching.
Yeah.
I was observing the cat in the background.
Yeah, a drama in 3 acts back
Uh-huh.
there, going over there, jumping up on the shelves on the other side of my room, coming back down, and then trying to figure out if she can squeeze into a space this big that
I
that my
noticed.
drawer is open.
I was like, oh, is she gonna? Is she gonna?
She has. This is the box that my Cintiq came in like more than a month ago, and I've just left it there in my room because she enjoys it, just lurking in it
Fair
and
enough.
occasionally leaping out of it and attacking my ankles.
Something like this is something that I is related to this conversation that we were having, but and I will start with a disclaimer that I am not a fan of George R. R. Martin's writing, or of him as a person. But that's so now that we have that out of the way, I will say that there is something that he said once in an interview when somebody asked him how he's able to write such like strong and deep female characters, and he says, "I write them like people." And I thought that was just like full stop. Like I treat them like people, like full stop. And I think that that is a huge part of this very conversation that we are having right now. Like what Amethyst Cat Lady is talking about in the chat. Because so much of like badly written, like disabled characters, badly written. Oh, children. That's the one that gets me every time. The way children are written in like show and TV shows and movies.
Yeah.
There are very few exceptions, but and the way that like non-white people are written, like if they're written badly, it is largely because on some level, somewhere in the writing slash directing, chain, people stopped looking at them as people and stopped writing them as people. I recently finally made my way through Sense8 on Netflix, and that show is a great example of a show where they're all the characters are from various backgrounds. One of the main characters is a trans woman, who, yes, I will echo what Kikatsu is saying. Sense8, watch it. Which like their stories often will incorporate aspects of things like Nomi, the trans woman. Like sometimes her stories will include and be informed by her being a trans woman. And I will note a trans woman played by a trans woman, so we'll just throw that out there as well. But they are not like her entire arc is not about that. It is informed by it. It is never separate from it, but it's not about that. And that's so much about like how the entire show is with all the characters. Like there is an African character who is from, oh gosh, I cannot remember now off the top of my head which country specifically. It'll come back to me probably. But he's very much informed by like by his race, by his culture, by like the conditions in which he lived. His story is always informed by that. It is not about that. And I think that's a huge, that is, yes, exactly. What Amethyst Cat Lady is saying is you can let something slash someone exist without it being a thing. Like that, like the best example that I can think of is with disabled characters in the way that they are portrayed in media is that they aren't a character, they are a disability. And that is the way that you do not write those.
And I will add again, as somebody who has a disability, like my Crohn's disease has affected a lot of the course of my life, but it is a part of me. But I am more than just the thing than that one thing about me. The other thing about disability frequently written by abled people is that like disabled characters will overcome their disability like it's this thing to be surmounted, and then once you've done that, you're free, you're in the clear, like you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's you've solved the problem,
Right, like the able-bodied, their trajectory in stories is like 0 to hero, right? The hero's journey. We reach the apex and we become a hero. Whereas disabled characters, the apex of their journey is what, like becoming an able-bodied person, I guess. Like, I'm sorry, but you're essentially God. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little heated on this one, but
Go off. Like, it is. It's reductionist though,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
it
congratulations,
implicitly.
the end of your arc is becoming a person now. Like, ugh.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like it implicitly tells you as somebody who is either an abled person reading about.
Uh-oh, did we lose John?
Oh no!
Oh no, we lost John right in the middle.
Right in the middle of.
Oh no.
Oh.
Oh no!
Oh, he's back.
Am I
Oh, there
back?
you're
Yes!
there.
Yes.
Oh,
Saved it.
you did it.
Okay. Suki, what did you do? I was just saying, like, for Zoom has just informed me that my internet connection is unstable.
Thanks, Zoom.
Thanks, Doom, for telling me that after.
But like, as an abled person reading that, like, you begin to view disabled people in that way. Like they have this crippling thing that they must overcome, and that is like their whole existence. And then as a disabled person reading that, it's really disheartening to be like, well, I have to do all of this just to be a person. Like I think often of, I think the that character in Avatar: The Last Airbender. I can't remember his name.
Teo.
He's like the Teo, the mechanical genius
Yeah.
in the wheelchair.
Teo.
I think like he's a really good example of he's a good example of a character that like was not defined by that. Like he very much found ways to continue to be part of the story, and there was much to Teo that wasn't just his disability,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It didn't feel tropic. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to go to Nico said something really interesting earlier, which is it's not just non-white people, it's non-white, non-American, non-cishet male people that are so often badly written. We need more diverse writers' rooms. Yes. Yes, indeed. We very much do. And that is an excellent point. It isn't just non-white people, but yes. Because, like, that's the other thing is, like, unfortunately, I feel like because so much of for so long, so much of the entertainment world has been Hollywood centric. It means that like by necessity, from that like perspective is from the lens of like the American perspective, and that's changing slowly, not enough, and not fast enough, but it is, but it's still there. It's still very much that. But ooh, sorry, I'm going back to chat because there's a lot of like this. This has brought up
I
a
just-
lot of stuff. I
know.
like it.
Yeah,
I had thoughts about
Amethyst.
formative media too, but I'll talk later.
No, I was just gonna comment that Amethyst Cat Lady is going off on the exact same things that I go off about on media and the conversation around disability about. But like, go ahead, Freeman.
No, it's okay.
I mean, I didn't have much
I was
to say
just
there except to nod and
I
agree.
was just remembering like all the indirect inspiration for my detective character now is actually a lot of film noir, but like the classic film noir from like French film noir, I believe. And I didn't watch it, but my mother watched it. She loved it, and indirectly I guess I kind of watched it in a way, but you know that that's kind of stuck with me a little bit. I
Yeah.
just realized because like there's a lot of the film noir that I like with I can't remember any of the names right now, but with the actor, what's his name? Humphrey Bogart, I believe he does a lot. But that I really loved the classic film noir, and I need to watch them now because when I was, I didn't, I couldn't follow it at that time. I just remember the images were very striking, and that's when I'm playing Mason. I know this is off topic, sorry, but or actually no, it is kind of on topic, isn't it? It's, playing Mason was kind of like a lot of his thing is scenery, how the scene is set, how he goes and does things quietly. I just realized, Interesting. Huh.
Hmm.
You know, I like to get into the voice of Mason as well, but it's also just like setting up the scene, how he's standing in an alleyway or like on the street, how he kind of his posture, the way the hat is tilted, like the cigarette, all those classic things. I think about that. That's kind of where the I like to think about Mason. The work done for Mason is like a lot of that.
Yeah, and it's like a collection of a lot of these little sensory details, a lot of these like little visual cues that make it feel film noir.
Yeah. Oof.
There's a lot of
Sorry,
tables being
I was very distracted because I like not distracted, but I was just my brain was somewhere else because I was still like parsing a whole bunch of different things that we were talking
Mhm.
Yeah.
about.
There's a lot of table flipping occurring in chat.
Yeah, yeah, and rightfully so from what I can tell.
that that is an early Disney Pixar reference that I can get behind. Amethyst Cat Lady, the Flaming Hades hair. Hercules, speaking of formative media, was was a piece of
You know what?
formative media.
I actually didn't see Hercules in its entirety until I was in college. Until I was a sophomore in college. So
We had the cassette tape of it, and it was
yeah,
my jam.
I've said this a lot, and this is we're I know we're kind of at the end here, but I will say that that I like in terms of formative media, there's so much that I think is so okay. I was not a Disney kid. Like I did not see a lot of like the classic Disney films. Some of them ever actually. But quite a few of them I didn't see them until I was like a teenager at the earliest. I knew about them and like all this stuff. So like when people like are obsessed with Disney and like are like really excited about it and excited about things that are happening with it about with like Disney things, I'm excited for them, but I don't feel the excitement because it's like not a thing I grew up with at all. It's just like not even part of my awareness, to be completely honest. Like people like and that's and like there's nothing wrong with either of those things. It's just when it becomes an issue, and this is the one that gets me, is when like I've like mentioned of like, oh yeah, I mean that's cool. I mean like that's interesting. It's not really a thing that I particularly connect to. When I've been like actually attacked, not like physically, but I've been attacked for not. They're like, how have you not seen it? I'm like, I just haven't. Like,
I mean, there's just movies, man.
there's just a movie. Chill out.
Yeah, I mean, like and of course, like my experience is not an uncommon one. Like my family had the whole drawer in the entertainment center that was just like the size of one of my dresser drawers. That was just like cassette, like VHS tapes of Disney movie after Disney movie. But when I say like Hercules was a piece of formative media for me, I mean that like for most of my elementary school career, I had little Hercules sneakers and a Hercules backpack. So like it should be no surprise then that the game that I have been binging most recently is Hades, which is a Greek mythology like themed like roguelite. And then one of the other like pieces of formative media for me like years later was Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series. So like, you know, as early as like, you know, some of the first movies that I was watching, like I was like, ooh, this Greek mythology stuff. Like I, for whatever reason, very much connected with those like sort of heroic stories.
Oh god, I just loved Greek myths. I like went straight to the source when I was a kid. I just read the Greek
Yeah.
myths.
What's that? Who's the author of that super old book of Greek mythology? I know there's you know the one there's like an anthology of it.
There's a lot of them, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I've read
There was
a lot of them.
uh-huh.
So I don't know which one you're talking about, but
Anyway,
yeah.
but I had a couple of those that hung around my house that I binged because like my parents got me for them as a middle schooler after like the Hercules binge of my childhood.
I had the little action figure, the three-headed not dragon, but every time you cut a head off, another one,
Hydra.
another Hydra. Thank you so much. I had an action figure, that action figure, and it just made my days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By the way, Geek Outs, I did write that down brick with Ryan. I forget, but yeah, I
Ryan
wrote that
Johnson.
down. Yeah, I'll look into that because I don't think I have seen it.
Yeah. Oh, God. We're at the end of our time, and I feel like I still have so much more to say about all of this.
I know. We always
Because we
get to like.
especially because we like definitely got off the topic of formative media for a while.
We wandered for a little bit, and then we happened on we wandered for a bit, and then we just like struck a super interesting topic with like 20 minutes to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh.
Part two.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
Or we'll
For
continue this discussion just on another that part of the discussion on
yeah.
Ramblemancy.
Okay, but for now, unfortunately, it is the end of the show. So we're gonna go. This episode of Ramblemancy, much like most sentences, must come to an end. There we go. I brought it all the way back to the beginning of the.
It's sixth goal. There we go.
Exactly. It's a stable time loop. Stable time loops. My favorite breakfast cereal. Okay, I'm gonna stop making that joke.
Oh my gosh.
Never gonna happen.
Do you prefer milk or water with your stable? I'll stop now.
I think what was the thing that I said in our in the Infinite Horizon group chat, which was do you pour the milk in before or after the stable time loops? Trick question. There is no before or after. Oh my gosh, Gemini Lightning. Thank you so much for the cheer. Thank you. We're gonna go. John, tell these fine people what's happening tomorrow because I definitely remember, but I'm testing you to see if you remember.
Tomorrow on Rule of Lore at 6 p.m. PDT, correct? Yes. At 6 p.m. PDT, Lucas and I are going to be having yet another Saturday evening of playing some games here on Rule of Lore. We are going to be playing the cooperative puzzle game Portal 2. I'm sure that some of the folks here are probably familiar with it. It's not a particularly new game, but I haven't actually played it, and I don't know. Have you played it, Lucas?
I've never played co-op. I played through the story once, through like the single player
cool.
story once.
I have heard a lot about this series, and I have played about an hour and a half of Portal 1, and I never played any of Portal 2, so it'll very much be probably a lot of the usual chaotic energy that our Saturday video game streams have, in which things happen and I freak out, and Lucas is like,
this is one of those instances where you may actually see the roles reversed. Where John is over there figuring shit out, and I'm over here panicking about not knowing how stuff works, and just using physics to mess with John.
We've been likened also, Nico, to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Oh
I think.
Yeah. Oh, and just as a final parting thought on the formative media thing, Gemini Lightning. I feel you on the whole Princess Bride thing and recommendations. I saw the Princess Bride when I was 10, but when people when there's a particularly popular thing that I have not seen and people insist that I watch it, I, like you, either need a very trusted source to tell me that I should watch it, or I need them to say anything, even just a little bit, one sentence, phrase, whatever, more than just, you should watch it, it's really good. So, and then, so I feel ya.
Geek Out's also recommending watch The Expanse. If you enjoy Infinite Horizon, actually probably do watch The Expanse, because Lucas and I both consumed that content before creating Infinite Horizon. And I won't say it shows, but it does in some cases.
Listen. I have no response to that. Okay. So, before we go, sorry, I'm still reading chat and getting very distracted because people are saying such good things. Gemini Lightning. This community is trustworthy. That this cast doesn't hang around with untrustworthy people. Thank you. We do our best. And this guy says, I'm guilty of getting so into something that trying to put words into the why to watch it without spoiling becomes a problem. That's fair. That's fair. Karaoke Night 69 with a token peanut butter solution. And like wanting Lucas to watch Gargoyles. I want to watch Gargoyles because when I was a little kid, I would always see it, but it was always on super, super late at night. Back when I actually had a bedtime. That's back when I had people in my life who had any power to enforce it whatsoever. Not that they're not in my life, they just have no power over me anymore. They just have no power over that particular aspect of my life. They gave up on that a long time ago. It's a lost cause. Anyway, oh god, Gemini Lightning, you stop it with that. There is absolutely no way that we would ever get sick of you. You get right out of here with that. Okay, we are gonna go for real this time. This time this isn't us doing the Midwest goodbye thing. Because this isn't us just like saying we're gonna go and then just continuing to talk. This is me being actively impeded by Chet, who I suspect has a hidden agenda of not letting us go so that the show can keep going forever.
Yeah.
The show. It's not that the show must
I'm
go on.
on
It's
to
that
you.
the show will.
It's not that the show must go on. Yeah.
That's good.
Chat distract.
Oh gosh. Okay. Wait. Sorry. Amy is Amy Dallin streaming? Is that what I'm understanding? Hold on. Let me find the. I mean I trust you. I just want to look for myself because sometimes we have bad timing and it doesn't go well. Oh cool. Okay. She definitely is, and we should go raid Amy. We should go raid Amy Dallin. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna do it right now. I'm not gonna bother with our afterward announcements. Just join the Discord, sub on Twitch, look at merch maybe, and also Patreon is a thing that we do stuff for. Okay,
Comfy shirt.
Look, get a shirt or don't. Just look at it and
I ordered mine like a month ago, and I got the shipping notification 3 days ago.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's
Oh,
they are pretty slow
Yeah.
right now because of everything, and also just Anyway, so if you order merch from us, it may take a while. Okay, we're gonna go for real so that we can go raid Amy. We're gonna go raid Amy. Let me start typing that in. So, John, if you have any parting thoughts to throw at. Oops.
No, just thank you for being here and chit-chatting with us tonight, everyone, for your various media recommendations and your input. As always, the conversation is much appreciated. And if you've got the time and energy, tell the people in your life that you love them.
Yeah. All right, so let's
Very
go raid
important.
Amy, everybody. Thanks for being here. Have a good night and good zone.
Good night.
And we will see you the next time you decide to come roll with us.